Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. It is 9:06 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. My left is Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Carolina Mejia, Commissioner Rachel Grant, and Commissioner Emily Klaus virtual. And we have County Manager Leonard Hernandez and Assistant County Managers Jennifer Walker, Joshua Cummings, Clerk of the Board Amy Davis. The meeting will be recorded and posted to the Thurston County YouTube channel within 24 hours. Written public comment may be received up to 2 hours in advance of the meeting and distributed to the board. Action may be taken at this meeting. First up is a review of this afternoon's agenda, second review, such as that might be. So let's pull that forward, and Madam Clerk, anything that we should be.
Yeah, there are no items to circle back on from last week, but there is one update from yesterday.
Okay.
The first public hearing related to the 2025 flood hazard mitigation plan update. A second proposed action is included now on the agenda. That is to approve the resolution adopting the updated plan.
Is that's under public hearing?
Yes, the first public hearing.
Okay, so we're looking at first public hearing, 2025 flood hazard mitigation plan update. Move the close the public hearing, and then you're saying this number 2 has been added,
Correct.
which is move to approve resolution adopting the update. Questions for, I know Ben's here, I think. Questions for anyone regarding this addition? Okay, thank you. That's the only change from last review.
And maybe just to highlight that the order of the public comment and the commissioner's community reports was.
Yep, okay. Any other questions from the board on the afternoon's agenda? Okay, very good. Next up is treatment sales tax budget overview.
Hardworking staff and public social services. Also, been a team effort, but a large part of the work, I think, Jay Lynn and Dr. Freiheit putting this together and really flagging the importance of this conversation for us a couple weeks back. Desire was to bring this to commissioners, have this conversation. And also we have, I'll let them introduce themselves and then take it away.
Dr. Jen Freiheit, Director of Public Health and Social Services.
Jalen Sowers, Behavioral Health Fund Program Manager with Public Health and Social Services.
Summer Miller, Budget and Finance Manager in the Commissioner's Office. Good morning.
All right, I will turn it right over to Shaylin, who has the PowerPoint up and ready to go.
Hello, Commissioners. Today I'm here to provide an update on the treatment sales tax or TST budget. So I'm going to cover how the funds are used, current spending and revenue trends, and strategies to keep the funds sustainable. I'm not sure if this is.
Always a bit stubborn first thing in the morning.
Thank you. As you know, the treatment sales tax is a 0.1% sales tax designed to increase funding for mental health and substance use treatment and therapeutic court services. An advisory committee of 7 to 9 volunteers appointed by the board makes non-binding recommendations on the use of TST to the board. They do this through strategic planning around the needs of people with mental health and or substance use disorders, examining program performance data, and reviewing TST budget requests. Next slide, please. Treatment sales tax funds a wide range of behavioral health services, including outpatient treatment, case management, peer analysis or drug testing, crisis response, and administrative support to the therapeutic courts. About half of TST funded programs combine treatment sales tax with other federal, state, and local resources for greater impact. In terms of oversight and funding processes, Public Health and Social Services staff monitor spending and program performance data. The advisory committee reviews the data to inform their budget recommendations to the board. And the board finalizes program budgets as well as the budget that can be awarded through our one-time community grants request for proposals process. For this process, Public Health and Social Services staff request approval from the board to release the RFP, which is intended to invite proposals for innovative local behavioral health projects. The committee provides a first review of proposals received and then recommends proposals to the board, and then contracts are executed per board direction.
Do you want to keep questions at the end? Or I don't really care.
I think it might
I'm
be
open to
good.
questions.
Might be good to ask the questions as we go through, because there's gonna be some slides that you're gonna wanna speak to, so yeah, feel free.
So on the very first substantive slide. Might be a summer question, but it's 1/10 of 1%. Is this only the unincorporated? Like, how does this work with the cities and incorporated versus whole county?
That I'd have to look into. I don't have that exact answer, but I'll make a note.
I'll follow up. with you.
Typically applies unless they have carved out their own. I don't know how this one works, but usually that's the model.
We can follow up.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that question. Treatment sales tax currently supports 38 programs spanning 9 county offices and departments. The Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization, or ASO, and as I mentioned earlier, one-time community grant awardees. In 2024, the TST budget was approximately 11.79 million, and overall 79% was spent. Some planned funds were not needed, and if I may direct you to the asterisks on the bottom right of the table. $100,000 was set aside for the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion or LEAD program in the ASO's budget, and this amount was covered by healthcare authority dollars from the state. Furthermore, our budget system shows the community grants budget was about $969,000 in 2024. However, the commissioners approved $316,000 in awards, and it was not changed in the budget system. So out of the $316,000 that was approved for each of the community grant awards, 86% was spent.
We moved the bar.
We're working on it.
Oh, thank you.
We have that far. Might have to move it around each slide because of information for them.
And then lastly, $50,000 was included in the commissioner's office budget for the Thurston County Court Alternative Program, also known as PCAP, and it was later determined that TST would not be needed for this program. This table shows actual and projected TST revenue since 2022, showing that revenue growth has been flat since 2023 and is projected to remain flat through 2027.
This is the part that causes us some concern here. And this is the part that's in alignment with the greater forecast. So this is why I'm so appreciative of Shaylin and Summer and Dr. Freiheit jumping on this and working together to get this before the boards.
Were we so you're saying it's been flat since 2023. Were we previously spending under different assumed projections?
The spend. Sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Give it to Summer.
When we look back, prior to 2023, the spending was about $1 million, a little over $1 million less than the revenues coming in, and the revenue projections seem to be holding pretty accurately.
And so this is important to look at because when we compare revenue with expenditures on the next slide, expenditures began exceeding revenue in 2023, which began drawing down on TST. If revenue growth remains flat as projected, the TST fund balance cannot sustain projected spending for 2026 through 2027. So what we have for you today is a suggestion for balancing out the budget that avoids dropping expenditures to projected revenue all at once. The suggestion is to decrease expenditures by $2 million in 2026 and 2027, keeping spending closer to projected revenues while using some fund balance to give programs and partners a softer transition compared to a $3 million decrease. This would bring expenditures to $9.3 million in 2026 and $9.4 million in 2027.
Our current fund balance is at 2.8.
Yes.
Because the fund balance was so high when we go back to 2022, there was administrative direction provided to start to spend that fund balance down. And you know, that, in theory, good direction until, of course, revenues start to really flatten.
Till you forget that you said you were spending it down and you keep spending it at that rate.
Right.
So you have to remember, though, when we looked at the chart, sales tax revenue, remember that 15%,
Yeah.
7%, 1%. So that's very, very steep. That's coming out of the pandemic. That's something that nobody really could have anticipated. But here we are, the team working together, identified this and is looking at the out years. We can't continue to spend at the rate that we were. So there's some adjustment that's needed in our combined approach as we put our heads together would be to use some of that 2.8 to smooth it out over the next few years. And of course, if in 26, latter part in 27, sales tax rallies and comes back stronger, we can always adjust what we're recommending to the board for 27.
Looking ahead, there are several strategies for consideration. Firstly, adopt no new TST policy requests for 2026 and 2027 that increase TST costs. Secondly, continue evaluating program effectiveness using program performance data. Build a balanced budget based on revenue forecasts. And additionally, the advisory committee is considering advising the board on a clear percentage of TST to go towards community grants, county programs, and the ASO that's responsive to revenue forecasts, fund balance, and strategic priorities. And these strategies will help ensure that TST remains sustainable while continuing to support local behavioral health services. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, I'm looking at questions. I'm also trying to read this slide because you covered a lot there.
We can go back.
Well, I mean, I just want to see, so we're no new policy requests, evaluate program effectiveness, create a balanced budget based on revenue projections. So it's a packed bullet right there. So what does that mean exactly when that third bullet, create a balanced budget? So that means that we have, I mean, in terms of programs, right? We still have on the books $11 million of programming that needs to be balanced down to 9.4. So
that goes back to the original slide, the slide previous. That's the balanced budget that she's relating to.
We're no longer putting out more than we're bringing in.
what was that piece you said about community grants were like at 900, but we only funded 300? Is that meaningful in terms of balancing the budget, like pulling that 900 out of the?
It is meaningful when you look at in 24, spent 9.3. The projected number, if we go back a slide to the 24.
That's what we planned to spend was 11.7, but we only spent 9.3.
Because I'm not gonna speak, Shaylin has it's the double aspects that you own. Why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, just to reiterate, that was the 2022 through 2023 RFP, I believe, or the last RFP that we had for 2024 and 2025 contracts. And $316,000 was what was awarded in total, but the way that it showed up in the budget system is still at the 969, so it didn't get changed. So it appears that the overall budget is 969 when it actually only 316 was approved in contracts.
That's good, right? In this
Yes.
context.
It's very good.
And then some of the other things we didn't spend.
Yeah, because there were decisions made, Shaylin explained that there were decisions made to pause some of the hiring of some of these positions to create some salary savings and to create some capacity there. That's why the percentage of spent, which is a very helpful column, doesn't have 100 across the board because some of those decisions were in play. Anything you'd like to add to that?
That was great.
So, I mean, probably obvious where I'm going with this, but I'm just like, is that the obvious path to balance this budget is to keep those, whatever decisions or whatever underspending, just hold the line there rather than pulling funding away
It's
from
not enough
something?
though still.
Well, it's 9.3 and that's what we're trying to target, right?
We're trying to target 8.3.
No,
No.
sorry. So go forward a couple slides. The recommendation, thank you for clarifying. Oh, back one, sorry.
Okay, you might, yeah.
The recommendation, while the revenue is 8.3,
We're gonna use fund balance to soften the landing, and so we're shooting for 9.3.
yes. So
So I'm just asking, like, is there something that didn't get funded in that underfunding that really needs to get funded, like? it was held back for whatever reason, 2024, but it really has to get funded versus that being just the obvious menu of right sizing.
I think the opportunity we have is for Shaylin and the TST Advisory Board to take a look at the directives. The board is comfortable giving direction, the 26 and 9.3 number, and then to work with those that have submitted applications or submitted the funding to try to get it to where we can avoid cuts by keeping it similar to what we spent last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously more detailed conversation. I'm speaking at kind of a high level, like, it would be one thing if we'd spent all 11 million, right? And we got to claw back $2 million from funded things. There could be some lower hanging fruit if things didn't get funded already. We're not having to pull money. Disappointing to not fund what we wanted to fund, but less disruptive than chopping out a program that's ongoing and successful.
I think what we don't have for the board at this point is Shaylin and the advisory group hasn't had the detailed conversations with those that receive the funding. So, but because you've noticed that the numbers are close, we're hopeful that this strategy minimizes major impacts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was that fair?
Yes.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions. My first question or request, right, is as we move forward, I would like to see more of a breakdown on on slide 6, for example, right? The public health and social services, the district court, like, I would like to know which positions that is like funding for each kind of like the sub buckets for each one of these. And that's a lot more detail, but I just kind of want to wrap my head around what is being funded as a whole with TST. And then, my next question is, right, if our projected revenue is at 8.3 and we're at 9.3, do we have enough fund balance in the outer years to keep this? Or are we going to have to reassess later on?
We go forward a couple slides. What you can see is right now our fund balance is sitting at 2.86. And let's explain that there will always be underspend because sometimes it takes a while to hire positions. But that's what we're tracking right now. The plan that staff have laid out is to use 2 million of that 2.86 in 26 and 27, and at the end of 27, we would potentially end within 887,000 fund balance, possibly a little bit more. And of course, this is at the tracking that we're doing for the forecast. And we would be the first ones to come to the board if sales tax rallies and comes back higher.
Can I ask how we got from 9.3 to 11.14 in 2025?
Well, if we go back 2 slides, you can see, one more. So you can see that the budget for 24 was 11.7, but we spent 9.3. You want to explain that a little bit?
I might need to do some more research.
Are you asking like why we budgeted 11.7?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
25, or is that going to come in less too, right? Is that 11?
Is that just because we had a higher fund balance and
Actual-
we were
Actual
able to?
was 9.3.
Well, not for 20, that's for 2024, but I'm asking for 2025, right? Like, are we bound to spend that full 11 million, or is it going to be more around the lines of 9 point something that we're spending? That's,
11.1 is currently projected.
that's what's projected?
2025.
Okay, and so
Good question.
with that 11, right, like, I guess my question is, if in 2024 we set aside, so the community grants, did that piece, did we fund that much? Like, what was it that elevated that bump in 2025?
I would need to do some more research on that.
Yeah, we'll get you those numbers, the breakout.
Yeah, if we can have the breakup for 2025, I would appreciate it as well.
And I think, staff, what I hear the commissioner asking is just to know the delta, like what grew it so that, and then the breakout of the positions. Because obviously these are really important programs tied to important positions.
So we can do a roll-up of that information, so you can get a sense of what potentially could be.
Do you think we're also at a point where we need more information, direction from the board to reset the expectations at that 9.3 will be helpful to engage with TST?
Yeah.
So those details I think are really important, but also we do need that direction to reset the expectations to the actuals on the 9.3.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money with that. I'm gonna be really like, I'm gonna question more about like our priorities. You know, like, so any money going external to things that we, you know, we're obligated to fund, like district court, superior court, you know, like anything going external, so community grant awards. You know, we'll wanna take a really, really hard look at that. So as they talk about priorities and we set priorities, that, you know, I think that'll be something that we should talk about here at the board.
I think that in terms of the policy discussion, that's I think very helpful for the board and the TST committee. In terms of the operational, I just want to provide appreciation to the staff for bringing this to us while we still had time to take that turn and to developing a strategy on how to make sure that we were fiscally responsible. So policy versus operations, I think I just want to say thank you for your partnership.
Do we have any policy regarding fund balance, or is it just a?
No, in this area, there's no county policy for the fund balance. That there was, obviously, this was every year approved by the board, but when we looked at, several years back, it was quite high. And so the desire was to get that money out to providers and to the community. And that's effectively what we've been working on for the last several years. So good job, staff, and TST Advisory Board for taking those steps. But with the flattening and low increase of sales tax, we have to, like Josh said, take a different course. I think there's a couple things before you. Is there a conceptual agreement with staff's approach to go forward to the slide that shows, there we go. With a plan to use $2 million over the next 2 years of the fund balance to try to bolster so that we don't have to go back down to 8.3 or 8.4. And then the next step would be a conversation once we get the information to the board about the details of the spend, the increase from 24 to 25, and Commissioner Fournier, your conversation about what are some of the guidance and how the dollars are spent to outside agencies.
This was also like connected to the opioid conversation, because we were trying to make, not decisions, but we're trying to work through that conversation, and we were told, don't make any decisions until you see where TST's at, because there's possibility that one possible use of those funds could be to help shore up programs here. Now, this is, I guess, where Commissioner Mejia's request comes in, because I can't tell from just breaking it down by department, what that would be. I would need to see the the program, the 38 programs, so that we would know where we would want to draw those connections or not. Because that played it, right? I mean, that played into the thought about whether to go after the ILA.
Yeah.
With the cities, and what we were just said is, well, let's look at TST, and is there gonna be any
Nexus there.
requirement there, but I don't think this is quite granular enough to
So that's what
figure
we'll,
that out.
that's what we'll do. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to make a motion, just so that way it's clear of what we're requesting.
Can you hold on one second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we can do, I hear what you're saying. Yes, we did present the conversation about the opioid abatement funds as we wanted you to be aware of this potential step down. I mean, there is a step down here. The fund balance helps to mitigate it, but until you can see what do we fund in 24, what are we funding in 25, and what could be the potential impact, I can understand where we would need that information. So I think we can round that up pretty quick. We could be back to you early next week and finish this conversation. I think that'll help then you understand, do you want to use anything from available funds from opioid abatement fund to move over to fund any of the programs or positions that may be at risk?
Could we?
Thank you. Okay, I was before I make the motion, I just want to be sure that at least we're okay with the staff recommendation to let TSD Advisory Committee know of the 9.3, 9.4. That way they can start. Okay, so then I'll go ahead and make a motion. So I would move to give direction to the county manager and staff to advise the TSD advisory of the projected expenditure of 9.3 million for 2026 and 9.4 for 2027. I would also like to give a direction to the county manager and budget staff for the breakout of the positions for TST, that TST is funding for 2024 and 2025. And to know whether TST is only collected in rural areas or if it's collected countywide. Is that your request?
Is that okay in one massive motion, or should you break that up into three things?
Yes. So the first one was to give direction to staff to advise the TST Advisory Board of the 9.3 projected expenditure for 2026, 9.4 for 2027. And also to give direction to staff to provide the breakout of the positions and grants that TST is funding for 2024 and 2025. And to also have the information in front of the board of whether TST is only collected in rural Thurston County or all of Thurston County and just the county area.
Second.
Okay, discussion on the motion on the table. Nope, okay, now I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
I.
Five ayes there. So that passes. Thank you, Commissioner Mejia. Okay.
So we'll be back early next week. Just again, special thanks to Shaylin, Dr. Freiheit, and Summer for all the hard work bringing this forward. And we'll be ready to come back with the information that's requested.
Thank you.
Walking away.
So. By zones.
Great, we have some of the departments here. So I'd like to call Public Works and Risk and HR. They'd be come to the table so being part of this conversation.
Can we stop screen?
Yeah, let's stop sharing screen. As they make their way up, I will pass over to Commissioner Klaus, who has this item added to the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks to our Public Works and Risk and Maria for being here. This item, we've talked about a couple times in the past, actually several times in the past. I think conversations on this date back to 2021.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a while. And this request is specific to the Atchison Road crossing out near Pattison Lake. And I've had a few meetings with staff, one most recently with, I think, most of the people sitting at the table. And we discussed a couple of reasons for why this hasn't moved forward in the past, particularly related to liability. There are a few rail crossings in Thurston County, but the Atchison Road crossing has, I believe, the highest volume of train horns. I could be wrong on that, but I know it's extremely high. It's about 44 horns sounded per day, which it's easy math. It's about 2 horns an hour. I've been out to Pattison Lake a number of times for events over the last couple of years, and me and my nephew at this point play a game where we count the number of train horns, and we were out there for like an hour and a half earlier this summer and heard 6 train horns. So it's definitely, impacting residents, not just near the lake, but they've done a pretty thorough study of a 1 mile radius around the lake. And I could go, into detail about the impacts on the community, but we have heard from a number of community members in recent weeks about the impact on their lives, and so I don't want to speak for them. I think the comments and the written comments kind of speak for themselves. But when it comes to the county's role in this discussion, I recently had a meeting with, a couple staff here, including the county manager and assistant county manager Jennifer Walker. And we discussed what next steps could look like if the board were to entertain moving forward on this conversation at this point. The board structure is different now than it has been in the past, so I didn't know, maybe the board has more of an appetite for it than last year's board did, but we do have the authority and ability to move forward with a diagnostic review. And unless staff have come up with new information since then, my understanding at the meeting was it would be relatively low to no cost to do such a review. Some other points raised by staff during our meeting included that we don't have a program for quiet zones that would be initiated countywide. And so that was one point that was raised, just, kind of as it relates to how equitable we're going to be with this. And if residents from one quiet zone are coming to speak up and other residents aren't, then is it fair to not assess all quiet or all crossings for the possibility of a quiet zone? And I think that's a valid point, and I do think that we need to explore a program that could be initiated countywide. But I think that it's also a good idea to start with the quiet zone that we know is highest impact and potentially lowest risk. There is not a lot of traffic that goes across this crossing. There's just a few houses on the other side of it, so it's not a high traffic area. And there are already safety measures in place, but the extent to which we would need to adjust those safety measures really wouldn't be known unless we did a diagnostic review to really fully understand the scope. So that's kind of what I have to open with.
Should we hear?
Thank you. And quiet zones were brought in front of the board in 2023. It was after the creation of the Patterson Lake Management District, and it was the first time we heard from the Patterson Lake community about the quiet zone. And so I want to say that, just this year I have met with constituents from Patterson Lake. I met with Chuck from the risk pool and also coordinated a meeting between the constituents and Chuck. Attended several trainings on quiet zones that were put on by the FAA and other areas. And I also invited the Patterson Lake constituents to attend those. And I believe staff were in attendance to those trainings as well. I have called and had several conversations with 2 other counties because I found out that there are 2 counties that have quiet zones, 1 in each county. And I sought information on how they achieved it, right? How they got over that insurance and liability question. And both of them went through different processes. And one, the community actually fundraised for all the upgrades, the diagnostic review. Basically, the community ended up paying for everything. The county is in charge of the ongoing maintenance cost for that. And in both instances, though, the jurisdictions did studies. And so those, as I've had conversations with both jurisdictions, I asked them like how they landed on it, how they approached this, how they decided on one area versus the other versus, right, like and especially if more communities were coming forward once they were implemented. And so both said that, well, the study gave us the traffic, the population, all of the information. So at this time, I am proposing that we do a study to gather information of all the crossings in Thurston County that apply to us, not the cities, but that apply to us. to gather what the traffic, the population, how many times trains go by, how many times they're blowing their horns. My concern is that, if we're hearing, that if other communities are interested, it's important for the board to acknowledge that not all communities have the tools, the time, or resources to advocate or come in front of the board. And the reality is that we don't know the full spectrum of all of our crossings. We only have it for one specific community, and that's because the community has done their due diligence and helped collect that data, but we can't make an equitable decision without having the full data of all of the communities impacted by this. And we also can't do all of our crossings because of our insurance and our liability. And our insurance is going up again this year, and just with our general fund, it is definitely concerning. So we have several railroad crossings across the county. I remember the presentation that Matt did back in 2023 when this first came up, and they were proposing a program, and there were rail crossings in the Yelm area, the Lacey area, down to several areas in South County, some in Olympia area, some in the Tumwater area. And so I definitely think that our decision-making needs to be based on more of a comprehensive look of the impact. And I'm not disregarding the data that the constituents of Patterson Lake have gathered, because it's been very thorough. I've met with them several times. But I think that we need to have that same level of information for all of our crossings. And so once we have that, we can decide the parameters of the risk that we are willing to take as a board. It might very possibly be that Patterson Lake is the lowest risk area, and just based on the information, I think that's very possibly true. But I don't think we can say that with 100% certainty at this point. And so, the board might decide they want to move forward with the diagnostic review. I'm hearing that it's low to no cost. But, even if we decide to do a study, and I think that, my concern is also the funding piece. And since this was not budgeted for, or, I know that, and just based on the status of our county road fund, I'm wondering, that whether it is one way or another, that we get the information from Public Works, or we do both, whatever the board decides, that we get the information of Public Works of like what something like this would cost and what we would have to not fund, because that's the reality, I think, of where we're at. And so that's just kind of some of my thoughts.
Commissioner Fournier. Yeah, I'm interested in learning more, but I think saying that like Patterson Lake, it's fairly affluent lakefront properties that have taken a concern with this noise, and I don't want to discount their concerns, but there's a lot of other communities that are affected by these, and especially, I think in my district in particular, the communities were built on train tracks. So like I mentioned, Bucota, the last time we talked about this, I really cannot imagine that there's homes that are more affected by train horns than the homes that are in Bucota. So like I'd like some kind of equity analysis or something included in this. The folks in Bucota, a lot of them don't even know that they could advocate for this kind of thing. And they're, it's harder for them to get into the county and speak to these things. Bucota, Tenino, and Rainier were all built on train tracks, essentially. I think about the Rich Road over by the Johnson Smokehouse. I know that I have been contacted by community members there. They're also right on the train tracks and in neighborhoods, and it's not a mile away on a lake. It's right in their backyard. So I want, if we approach it, I'd like to look at it through a couple different lenses You know, I think these things are loud and they probably are damaging physically and, you know, psychologically when it is right in your backyard. I grew up on train tracks, you know, I got used to it, but I'm, you know, at least quarter mile away.
Should we hear from maybe Matt or Karen about kind of all of that? I mean, one of the questions that's obvious is, you know, it sounds like two things are proposed, potentially diagnostic review and then more of a countywide assessment of how many crossings and impacts would it be? And what is that? Who could do that and how much might it cost?
Well, we would need to take time for sure to be able to go and assess what a study like that might cost and what that process would be for identifying that person. I'm sure, Matt, you probably know off the top of your head. I don't know if you have consultants that we think that could do that. Seems a much more thoughtful approach to do a study across the county to know what the extent is of what we're managing and dealing with. I think what you're gonna continue to hear from staff, and I assume risk as well, is we fundamentally go back to the concern for the liability and the long-term risk. Should we move forward on anything like this, once we have the initial investment in the improvements, the long-term maintenance and you know, just review and assurance that those systems are all up and operating on an ongoing basis properly is going to be really key and important, and put a lot of responsibility on us to make sure that those are being maintained properly. And then Commissioner Mejia touched on the resources piece of it, and financially, the resources are of concern for us. You're gonna hear shortly from Public Works about the status of the road fund, which I don't think will be a surprise to any of you, but you know, it's very true. If we direct resources to railroad quiet zones, it means that we aren't going to be able to direct resources to something else. And so that's a priorities conversation across the county. Matt, did you wanna?
I just want to confirm, we've talked about the diagnostic review and we've talked about the Patterson Lake crossing. What I'd like to confirm is that a diagnostic review needs to be performed, a study needs to be performed to identify the top location before we do a diagnostic review.
What do you mean?
So we don't know that the Patterson Lake, based upon the results of the study, is gonna be the most appropriate location to invest in first.
You're asking about timing.
Correct.
Timing, and that the study would occur before we would move forward on any sort of diagnostic review. step.
There was a statement that was made that Patterson had the highest impact and the lowest risk. And I think that may be, I think what staff is saying is a study would help
You need to do an
potentially
analysis.
confirm that.
We need to
Or-
prioritize the location. Excuse me, Jennifer, sorry.
Oh, yeah, the board would prioritize, but the study would give all of the
The
information.
data, the full
We
scope
need
of
the
it.
data to be able
And
to
then we
make
could say, no, we're not just picking the quiet zone for the folks on the lake that, you know, and maybe the worst one is in Bucota where folks haven't been able to advocate as much. Okay.
We just don't have that data, and so we can't provide any insight into that.
So
This
that,
crossing is in the county, right? I mean, we're not
yes, it's in the
close
county.
to Lacey. I know it may even be like one of the annexation.
Annexation pieces and we're-
Really close to Lacey, but
The Dakota crossing is not within the
Yeah.
county.
oh, it's not. It's within their.
Yeah,
their
it's within the
municipal-
city.
But the one adjacent to Tenino, there's one just outside of Tenino city limits that they need to, while there's none coming through.
You're not gonna be able to meet like
Yeah.
5,000 people. or
Yeah, but I
whatever.
think it would give us the overall, right?
Go
Because
down.
not everyone knows about
Yeah.
quiet zones. I mean, this was an issue that I found out. I didn't know that this, right? And I know that there are rail crossings all over the county that are affected and you know, from again, just from Yelm to Lacey to Olympia to Tumwater, all of South County and I think having the full picture of all of them, I think would be beneficial. I'm repeating myself. I apologize.
So
But I don't know how much it's gonna cost either, right? And so
So what's if the board was interested in that, which sounds like the next step, if this is gonna go forward in any form, what would be that look like timeline, or what would we have to ask you to do?
Yeah, what I would recommend is we allow Public Works time to figure out who would do the study, how much time it would take, and how much it would cost, and then they can come back and report that to the board. If that's the direction the board wants to go.
Commissioner Klaus, is that, I mean, it sounds like that's the only sensible way of moving your item forward.
It makes sense, yeah. So I kind of was hoping to hear from staff, and it sounds like this question's been answered, but I wrote it down. Because this conversation has gone on for a couple years. I was gonna ask if you had info on other crossings, but it sounds like the answer is no. Oh, and there's a hand up too.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think that a study for countywide crossings is a really, really good idea. I think that that needs to be a path forward either way. And I'm not one to come and say I have all the evidence and data to back up which one is higher risk than the others. It's just through conversations I've had with staff and constituents and personal experience being out there. So if there's anything you. Sorry. So yeah, through conversations I've had with others, it appears to be the lowest risk, highest need, but as the assistant county manager pointed out, that could be untrue if we do a study and learn more. But the comments being made about other crossings, like in South County, I think Commissioner Fournier is right. South County residents have more barriers to coming and talking with us. But also there's evidence that, I mean, sound reflects off of water differently than it does off land. So this issue really is exacerbated by the fact that the crossing is right next to a lake. And it actually makes the impact broader than just lakeside residents. It kind of goes farther than it would if it were not next to a body of water. I also, Commissioner Mejia brought up that in other counties where this has been done, the residents have helped with the cost. And I wanted to point out that residents at Pattison Lake and nearby HOAs have also talked about helping with covering the cost, and that's something they're open to. So that's good for us that they're willing to do some fundraising, and they've already conducted a lot of outreach. They're really organized, so I have no doubt in my mind that they would be successful in fundraising to help us offset costs. And I think, let's see. I think I'll let Commissioner Grant go. I have a couple more thoughts, but I'll hold those for
Okay,
him.
Commissioner Grant?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to just make sure folks knew how I felt about this. And I really like the idea of the full comprehensive understanding all of the areas of the county. And, so I'm really interested in what Commissioner Mejia has kind of laid out. But I also, out in Yelm, I would agree that with, like what Commissioner Fournier said, that they might not know that it's even an option, that, out here in Thurston, the greater Thurston County area, that, that they could bring forward, this kind of stuff. And so I would definitely also be interested in really getting a good view of all of the different crossings in Thurston County area and then moving forward from there.
Commissioner Fournier?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I think this is important, but it's also important to look at it from big picture and make sure that if we do create opportunities for these improvements, and these are like health and safety improvements, it's not just available to the community members that can afford it. It needs to be done equitably. Or made available equitably.
Okay, so we can just provide that direction to what county manager suggested, to have Public Works come back with some details on a more broader study of all crossings.
Can the study be done in-house? Like, do we have to?
We'd have to analyze that. I think I'd like to give Public Works time, realizing that they are dealing a lot with the budget situation. I know that normally it's asked, well, what's the time frame? I'd ask to give it at least 3 weeks to take a look at this before we're coming back to the board.
Commissioner Klaus?
Thank you. Yeah, I really like this direction forward and I appreciate the board's openness to having staff look at this a little bit. My question for staff is what would, and you might need some time to think through this, but what would the information entail when it does come back? Is it just number of train horns and number of residents or vehicles? Or would it also include decibels and like other sound impacts?
I think we need to be able to go back and start thinking about what that criteria should be that we analyze.
And that'd definitely be part of the study is identifying the criteria that we're going to use to prioritize locations.
And that's where honestly, they will have to evaluate, do they need a consultant to come on board that specializes in this? To be fair, I don't believe we currently take care of train crossings as a course of business, so.
We do not.
Maybe we can get our hands on the one or both of the other counties' studies just to see what they looked at, just.
Yeah.
You know, for what it's worth. Commissioner Grant?
Yeah, well, and I was just wondering, does TRPC, I mean, might be some coordination there with the Transportation Policy Board or with TRPC, because it seems like this is something that they may already have mapped. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of data out there that just kind of sits on the shelf over at TRPC. So just kind of mentioning that I'm not sure if they already have done some of this work for other reasons.
I think that can be a part of the scoping that Public Works will do, because more than likely, there's potential cities that have already done this. So Public Works has a procurement contract person that can do some outreach to see what other studies, what other scope of works have already been developed. So they're really good at looking at, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's something already out there. With respect to doing it in-house, I would agree. I don't think they could gather some, but some of it, they don't have that level of expertise. And then Karen would have to decide what work aren't they going to do, because they are, 100% programmed out. So it's everything's doable. It's just what's not going to get done.
And I just want to say, like, the reason that I haven't brought up even the idea of a study in since the 3 years that this has been is because it's been painful operation with the jurisdictions of because they're not covered. And so they are not promoting this at all. And so every phone call, it's a little inch I get. And a lot of my emails went unanswered, and I've been at WASAC just following commissioners around trying to get the information.
I tracked Lisa Janicki down at a mixer for legislative.
And so it's, I think last time it was, the commissioner was very exasperated with me because I just kept asking about it. And so this was just the new thing that came up, and I was like, oh, you should have told me that from the very start. And so it's been kind of a learning process on quiet zones for me as well. And I think it's for everyone. So just kind of wanted to let everyone know on the timing of that.
Well, I appreciate this, Commissioner Klaus, because I mean, the thing that, the railroads and the federal government don't help us all that much in these contexts, but this is one where there's a program, it's here's the brochure, guided, it's quiet zone established, but the fact
in 2022.
Yeah, the fact that there's a program and it's actually been thought through, it just seems real, and we have an absolutely, I think, perfect place to deploy it. Just seems, it's very difficult for us to turn to the community and say, yeah, there's this program, but we're not gonna use it.
Unfortunately, not everybody has the same legal standards that Washington State does.
Yeah.
Other states have different,
They may just
right? We have
be
that joint several
taking a risk.
liability, which really
Yeah.
opens us up to it.
And the
Different
railroad,
level of risk.
the railroad will develop all kinds of programs that shift
Shift
maintenance
liability
and
on
liability
us. Yeah.
away from themselves. So I would imagine that they led the charge on developing that.
Okay.
One of the.
Very burdensome to not press that horn button when you, it's a major, that's a major, concession that they've made for us.
One of the things you brought up that we can also look at is the annexation conversations we're having with Lacey.
Yeah.
I need to look at the
Look at the map.
and the various
May affect the proposal that we.
Yeah, don't call
decide
them
to-
when we start doing ours. They had a number of configurations us to consider, so I didn't even think
No.
about that.
We like proposals B.
Well, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't say that if the board chooses to move forward, so the study is done, the board decides to move forward with some type of funding of a railroad quiet zone program, there's the initial costs, but then there's also the maintenance. And so, and because of the liability with railroad crossings and not being insured, this will reprioritize where staff respond. So right now, what is it? Every time if there's a stop sign down, there's a level of service set within 24 hours. That's back up. This will prioritize, this will move up in the priority for staff response for operations. And
My superficial, like I was just reading the legal section of this. I mean, my superficial thought about this is that because basically they've taken away the not blowing the horn as a factor for cause, and whatever we do is gonna be a well-designed upgrade, right? So I don't see how like that can be liability to us. Where we would have liability is then we let that thing that we did fall into disrepair. That's where we could get blamed. That's the only way I could see we could get
that's
blamed. is
exactly what I'm talking about.
We do something and then we just let it kind of fall into disrepair, and then someone could go, well, you,
30 of these, that's
you
a
know,
lot.
now you're at fault, Thurston County, because someone got killed and you didn't, you know, the candlesticks had fallen down and you didn't replace them. So like, that's really the cost, and the risk is just, you know, I think we can zero out the risk at the cost of prioritizing the maintenance of, you know, so it's
But
about
right now, it's
money.
all on the train organizations. We don't have any of the responsibility whatsoever.
I don't think we could zero out the risk. I think we could mitigate.
Yeah.
I think we could reduce it, but I don't think we can zero it out,
Yeah, and
not in this state.
and the dynamic that takes place is in the risk, and I feel compelled to say this for you know, in the risk, it's all on us. So let's say something goes down, there's a windstorm that happens here. Candlestick goes down, whatever, it's not maintained quick enough, something happens. You don't have Brian able to go to the risk pool to say, what's our deductible? We're not into this for 250, we're in for everything from the outset. So that's why there's an organizational like, whoa, not being covered for something that involves huge moving trains and automobiles and pedestrians and all of that, you're putting it on our staff's ability. So that's where Jennifer's saying it creates can't be 24-hour, we're gonna replace a stop sign. It has to be pretty immediate.
Didn't we have that case, Jennifer, where it was about not fixing a crosswalk thing quick enough? I mean, we were on it, it was on our schedule and we were kind of a normal course, but something happened in that window and we got sued. And I don't remember how it all shook out, but it was obviously cost us money to even defend. So, I mean, it's not something that's negative.
And you make a good point, right? Say we do have a countywide windstorm that knocks down all kinds of things that need to be repaired and replaced. What we are then doing is potentially prioritizing this one area and repairing this over other areas in the county that have higher priority or back to your equitability thing, right? That may impact more people and safety in the long run, but we need to prioritize this because of our higher risk in this area.
I keep going back to a snow event and snowplows.
Okay, other questions for staff?
Thank you, team, for being here. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioner items on the mornings this morning?
Just, I do have a question. So the planning sessions tomorrow, the schedule is very packed, so, you know,
When to when, like 9 to 5, or what is it?
8:30.
8:30 to 4? 5, okay.
And the clerk will be using the on-screen timer that she uses for public comment. She'll set it for 30-minute presentation. So it'll sound when we're at 30.
So 8:30 and then 9, it's like right to the next one?
Yes.
So I won't give much.
And there's a couple of breaks in there, but it is, and then it is a packed day. You only have, I think, 30 minutes for lunch.
It's gonna be awesome.
Thank you for your optimism.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's start now.
Commissioner Mejia loves budget. It's her favorite part of the whole job, right? So today, you're-
Line up Red Bulls.
Commissioner Grant?
Yeah, so will tomorrow be hybrid too?
I think so, yeah.
Like it'll be online?
Oh,
It will be, we'll have a Zoom meeting.
Okay.
But it will-
Okay, I just want to make sure. I'm trying to be there in person, but it
Well,
just depends
won't
on
be
how.
live streamed, but you'll have that opportunity to be zoomed for sure.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, just in case I can't make it if my son's not feeling well, but I will do my best to be there in person.
Thank you, Commissioner Klaus.
I actually have a question about that because some constituents have reached out to me about the live streaming not being available, and this one sounds like it won't be recorded either.
It's a
Since-
planning session.
Yeah, so I've had a couple people ask me if they're able to get on the Zoom if they just keep themselves muted so that they can watch it if they're not able to attend in person. Is that something we're able to do?
It's not something that we have allowed, I think, because of,
It's generally not been permitted.
Yep.
Due to Zoom bombing and.
Yep.
Folks who joined the Zoom, they could potentially record it and the meeting itself is recorded.
yep,
Okay.
we encourage folks to come in person if they can.
Yeah, if they, well, sometimes they just can't. And I know like Zoom has different types of meetings where you can have panelists who are able to talk and others are just in the audience and can't Zoom bomb or interfere with the meeting. Is that something that we might be able to do? Maybe not for tomorrow, but I've had a couple people ask, they've been concerned about the live stream being down and not being able to come in person.
Well, I guess the question is when are we anticipating I know our tech issues that we're working through, is there like a ETA on having live streaming back?
The equipment has been ordered, so it just takes a few weeks for delivery and then it needs to be installed and staff need to receive training. So
So it could be another
So
month
coming.
or more.
Yeah, it's definitely coming. They've
Yeah.
looked at,
So that discussion might not even,
identified the issue
Matter once we get
and
to we-
purchased the needed equipment.
because once that stuff's back online, then
Yeah,
that
Well-
issue's solved. I wouldn't want to change the way we do anything between now and this Uber meeting tomorrow.
yeah, I don't think that there would be time to, before tomorrow. That makes sense. And I guess another question that kind of goes along with just accessibility and information is I was wondering if we could get an update on where we're at with the discussion about meeting minutes because it's been increasingly burdensome to not have something like that available, even if it's just direction that's been given, especially as we continue budget conversations and we've had a lot of budget meetings with a lot of information being shared and it's just impossible to go back and watch meeting after meeting trying to get a tiny like snippet of information that I'm looking for. And then we had a recent email come out on Friday that I kind of flagged and I'm talking with the county manager about, but there were a couple bullet points on the Friday email about budget conversations last week that kind of caught me off guard because I don't remember them being discussed or they weren't discussed. And having meeting minutes would give me something to look back on to reflect, like kind of compare what my notes are with anything that's coming to us in writing. So I know the last time we talked about this, Leonard, you mentioned needing to check with Amy about capacity. And I was just wondering if there's any updates with that.
Yeah, the meeting minutes are being posted right now, correct?
they are.
Yeah, so we can point that out and Amy will send an email out to the board on the progress that she's been able to make. But the meeting minutes are being posted within how long?
Generally about up to 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay, I've looked at the meeting minutes that are being posted and I honestly can't even remember where I found them because I think they've been, I can't remember where I found them, but they're not being sent out and the ones that I did see didn't have any like direction. It was basically just like no direction's been given, even though we do give direction during meetings. So I wasn't sure if that was just like a boilerplate type.
I'll send you the link for where they're posting them. And then we'll
Okay.
also, probably by the end of the week, Amy can send out an email update, laying it out so that all the commissioners can have where they're posted. And then maybe in the next 2 weeks, we can have her come and kind of talk that through.
Okay.
Something that we talked about in our agenda setting meeting with the chair and vice chair was uh, being a little more like intentional in when these agendas come out, like you'll look at this one today, we have a proposed motion on there.
Mhm.
So you can refer to this agenda and you can take, you'll be able to know exactly what was proposed. If it was this, if it was changed, and then there's, we're trying to be a little more formal with, and when we take action on something, making a
Yeah.
motion, voting on it, and then that's documented what was done, so it's
Super
pretty
long
clear.
motions.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the updates to the agenda. I think the proposed motion is super helpful. Because sometimes we have an item come up more than once, but the motion is only at one meeting, and having that identified on the agenda is really helpful. But like the motion today was 3 parts, and something like that in reflected in minutes would be really helpful for me to be able to search back and look on, so.
Yeah, we'll send you the link. Amy will send an update to the board on where they're at, and then we can have her come back in a couple weeks and report
Okay.
out.
Thank you.
It's been a long-standing question. I remember when I first, started campaigning for this job and trying to figure out, like, I wanted to see how the board voted on stuff, and there was nowhere.
Yeah,
Like, there was no way I could see like what my opponent's voting record was, or, assess in any way. Like, I mean, it was surprising to me then.
mhm,
And then I kind of got used to it. And then we had those conversations that I kind of outlined with Ramiro and Elizabeth Petrich from the prosecuting attorney, and we kind of landed back in the same spot to a large degree, although we made a few changes. And then I think the newer changes that Amy and county manager are talking about now are, again, improvements. It's not going to be, there's always a trade-off, and it's not going to be quite as perfect as we'd all like, because there's reasons for that, but I think we can improve.
And we are absolutely capturing motions and direction, if that's given in meetings.
That should be like kind of
That's a.
baseline.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anything else this morning? We're back at 2 p.m. for our business meeting and public hearings, so we're adjourned.